There he is.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, are we so excited? So I hear it's a 4 a.m. wake-up call for you there in Denmark.
Let's just say that I regretted that decision a little bit, and my girlfriend regretted it a lot when that alarm went off. But I will admit, right off the cuff here, it's 4:10 in the morning. Gentlemen, when this at some point, when travel disappears completely, when you are forced to flee Canada because you insulted the wrong people, I will hire both of you to be my personal hype men. Never had I had such an introduction. I am humbled and honored.
Excellent.
Awesome. Thank you.
We don't blow smoke here on this show. So what you hear is what you're getting. So that is honest praise, my friend.
Give your apologies to our girlfriend, to your girlfriend.
Yeah. Yeah. So Claus,
it must be done.
Claus, we did a little intro to you, but there's a whole bunch of gaps in that story. And reading your bio and reading what you've accomplished over your lifespan, the decisions you've made, the road you've traveled, maybe you can give our viewers a little bit of a background, fill in a little bit of the gaps of who is Claus Raasted.
I think and thank you for that. Again, thank you for that introduction. I think the simplest way to describe me that makes sense, I don't want to get into like bios or why I dropped out of university when I was 23, that sort of thing, though that might be fun, but instead say that I don't meet many people who have made as many mistakes as I have, who've done so much stupid stuff. And I'm not talking about like getting high and jumping on a freight train at night or robbing a bank, that sort of thing. No, like projects, things that have just gone wrong or not gone as you wanted to. However, that also means that I've gotten to do a lot of stuff that's gone right. Because if you count the mistakes and if you count the failures, then the world is a scary place. And that's one of the things that keeps people from innovating. They count the failures. But if you learn to kind of get past that and you count the successes, then you can get pretty far. And I mean, you mentioned the last book. There's come one more since that. So this is number 30, but number 31 has come out since that. And one of the reasons that I've written so many books is that I'm not a perfectionist, which means I actually get stuff done.
I love that. I love that.
So I think those are the two most important things to say about me is that I make a lot of mistakes and I'm not a perfectionist. And that means I do a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but it also means I do a lot of stuff. And oddly enough, no matter how bad you are at something, if you keep on doing that, then at some point you get better, even with books.
Yeah, exactly. And I really like you got the counting the failures, but you're looking towards the successes and you're reevaluating those from that. And you're learning, right, Claus? You learn from every single one of those successes and failures.
Sometimes you learn less, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What's that called?
I was just going to say, you learn more from your mistakes than from your successes. So,
well,
very true. I think I'll say that some of them I wished I learned a little bit less from. They could have been a little bit smaller, and they would still have been great. But that's what that is.
Yeah, yeah. So, Claus, you are the director, and I'm going to put this up when you taught this. Make sure you guys get your pens ready when you watch this now or watch this on other formats. You're the director of the College of Extraordinary Experiences, or as some have referred to this as the Harvard of Experience Design. Wow. From what I have read, it enables people to explore the realm of experience design. So, first of all, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this project of yours that is absolutely... And here's something that is different. Here's something that's unique. Here's something that doesn't follow the flow. And people, this is what I'm a believer in, this type of mentality, is where you go and you learn, you try not to do everything your competition is, but learn from it, but separate yourself and make sure you establish an identity. So what is this College of Extraordinary Experiences, Claus?
So the College of Extraordinary Experiences started a couple of years ago as a brainchild of several people, but kind of the leads on it were me and Paul Boulencha, the author of Gamification and Tourism, and now obviously a co-founder of the college. And we went in with two core ideas. One of them is that if you want people to learn, something, to think differently, to innovate, then an easy way to do that is to get them together. Let's say you get 50 doctors, 50 steel workers, 50 filmmakers, and you create an environment. Maybe you host them at a nice venue, or you do an online meeting, and then they'll share. If you manage to do that, they'll share ideas. Somebody will say, oh, we did it this way, or we did it that way, or don't do it this way. And people will learn from each other. That's great. The professional conferences all around the world, forums, all that sort of thing. But that brings incremental innovation, which is good. Now, we thought if you want radical innovation, you need to bring people who would never sit down at the same table, or who would rarely do so. So we said, what if you set down a table with a Formula One race car driver, a jazz musician, a doctor, and a Hollywood filmmaker? Who doesn't want to be the fifth person at that table? Turns out everybody does. But when that happens, for one thing, most people don't create those tables. They're not curated. And if they are, what happens is people sit down physically or virtually or just metaphorically, and then they look at the others and say, you're too weird. You're too corporate. You're too old. You're too French. You're too artsy. You're too different from me. So they don't listen and they don't trust. So what we thought, if we can crack those codes, if we can curate interesting audiences that connect with each other, and two, if we can bring them through experiences, bring them out of their normal lives into a place that's special, then when they sit down, whether it's at 4 a.m. in the secret dungeon bar, because of course we have that, or it's during some sort of weird workshop, or chatting with imaginary goblins in the hallway, then they will connect and they will trust each other, open hearts and open minds. And then you have radical innovation, because then you'll have a theater guy saying, oh, but we have this problem in our theater. And then somebody else saying, oh, but we've solved that problem over in the steel industry, or I run a circus. Have you tried this? And normally you discount such things. But because of the environment, because of the way it's staged, because of this extraordinariness, it helps it's at a medieval castle, then people actually listen. And that means you get radical innovation. You get the 10x ideas instead of the 1.1x. Yeah. So that's the college in a nutshell.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah, I looked at some of those photos of on that website, and holy mackerel! I mean, those look like a hoot, man.
It's not the worst.
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, that, I don't know about you, but everyone says they got a bucket list. But since with our industry and what we do for a living, and meeting all of these fine people, that bucket list, there's no such thing as a bucket list anymore. It's a bucket book, man. And that extraordinary experiences is now in the bucket book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be happy to have you guys visit once reality allows again. We hope to be able to run our edition in September. We are selling tickets. Things are going as planned, but we all know, everybody who signs up knows they may end up having to delay for a year. We know we may end up, but we're hoping against hope that things will play out nicely and we can meet, because we can't take this virtual. I mean, some things you can take virtual, but it would be weird to do it virtually. So we do other projects, but not the conference itself.
I can't even imagine, from what I've seen, to try and pull that off on a virtual world. That'd be a tough one. That'd be a tough one. So what's the realm of experience design?
Experience design is essentially a way of looking at the world. Like if you get people in, it's a lens. If you talk to a product designer and you say, what would you differently in this room? She's going to look at things like texture and production and aesthetics and all that sort of thing, but is going to look at the physical stuff. If you look at a service designer, she's going to look at, okay, so what are the flows of people? How do you use the space? How do you make it do what you want to? Can we change whatever we're doing? And if you look at an experience designer, we're going to say, okay, how do we add music, put on bells and whistles, and get in a dancing bear or two? I know this is, of course, a caricature way of saying it, but to explain that we all approach the same problems, whether we're in behavior design, culture design, experience design. It's just what we look at and how we look at it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense.
So the atmosphere.
Yes. And what is it like from the human perspective? What are you actually going through? And in some industries, this is so built in that people don't even understand this is a thing. Computer games, that's all about selling an experience. Where if you're building an airport, I talked to at our college, we had somebody who was one of the parts of her job was helping choose the new Berlin airport, how that was going to be. And she said, I've never heard of a user journey or a customer journey before. Nobody ever talks about that in the industry I'm in, and we're choosing what the airport will look like in Berlin. And any junior level game designer will, of course, know that.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of it is getting people from different places together, because what in one place is known as everybody knows that it's nothing special, in another it's completely mind-blowing, and it's the simplest of stuff. So that's the secret. It's bringing people together, and that at its core, bringing old ideas into new spaces is what a lot of innovation is.
How do you break that corporate speak, that corporate mentality, and get them to jump into this experience world? There must be some sort of internal fighting there just by habit, right?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, first you hire me, of course. No, how you actually do that. And that's tricky, because it's no secret, and Corona is a great example of that, is that everybody wants innovation. Nobody knows what it is. And everybody wants things differently, as long as they don't have to change. And I usually describe it that there are 3 stages, and this goes for humans as well as organizations, but organizations it's easier, is that either you are at the desperate stage. Things are, you're dying, the money's gone, things are going crazy, you're going over the edge of the cliff, and you're close enough that you're thinking, oh my God, we're going to die. And then somebody shows up and says, guys, we can save this. You just need to all wear penguin suits. And you're like, okay, wear the penguin suit, get it going. You're ready to try out new things, because you know that the alternative is doom and destruction. It's what in the consulting world was called like the burning platform for a long time. So that's one place where change happens. The other is at the opposite end. That's if you're Google. If you say, oh, our core business is so strong that let's use $1 billion here, let's use $1 billion there. Oh, why don't we just experiment and try out something new, because it's from a place of strength. It's that annoying couple who has 4 kids, successful careers, and they've just taken up tango dancing on Wednesdays because, we like to try out new stuff. And you're sitting there with your mortgage and your festering love life and your annoying dog, and you're thinking, I can't even find time to watch a new episode of a comedy show. What's wrong with these people? So the change happens at the outskirts, at either desperation or at a feeling of invulnerability. Because in the middle, where most of us are, and you'll have heard this, guys, is when somebody says, I'd love that, I'd love to try out new things, but I'm busy right now. We don't have time. We don't have, but we'd love to change, but we have a board meeting. And right now, COVID has a lot of organizations that are in the desperate category, because obviously, I mean, what do you do when you're an airline and the planes aren't flying? What do you do when you organize huge events and nobody's allowed to go? You need to think differently. So change happens very fast. And at the other end, you have some companies, some of the online people who are just floating in money and success, and they're also trying out wild new stuff. And the real trick when you go to corporates is to realize that if everybody's in the middle, you can be part of your organization and make that desperate, preferably on purpose, saying, guys, we're going to slash half your budget. Are you up for the challenge? Then you will take the same resources and move it over to another group and give them that invulnerability. So instead of everybody being like on a 5 where nothing's happening, you have the heroes who say, we're ready to take it on a 2, and then we can boost somebody else to an 8. And then you have 2 places where innovation happens. But that's tough. It's tough being the people to say, we're gonna sacrifice our division or group or our time to pressure ourselves, because nobody likes that, even though it's healthy. And it's also tough to be the one to say, okay, and now we're going to take that, and instead of patting everybody, we're going to boost our marketing or boost our production line or boost our whatever it is. So it's basically what you do when you have a kid. One of you says, I'm going to take the night watches, I'm going to take the diapers, I'm going to do it so you get enough sleep so you can still be a human. Where if you just kind of split it evenly, that's great, but then you're just going to be hanging on, which is what most of us do with kids. But if you want to grow, if you want to have wild things happen, you need to either be in that place of strength or that place of weakness. And you can't manufacture the place of strength unless somebody else takes on that extra burden, or you just happen to kind of, things are going well, and then you'll experiment like crazy.
Yeah. Experimentation is good.
It is completely necessary, and so many people don't get it. They're so scared of it. They're I mean, for you guys, you have this thing, you're doing it once a week. It's brilliant. You can experiment with so many things. You can experiment with guests. You can experiment with graphics, with intros, with length, with promotion. And what's the worst that can happen? Okay, this week wasn't as good, or this week was different. And then next week you're back on the horse. There's so many people who are in that situation that they could experiment, but they're like, oh my God, what if episode 962 is not exactly as good as 961? We will die. And they won't. They really won't. So yes, experimentation.
I love that. Yeah, we're big. I don't know if you're familiar with the tourism industry here in Canada, but it's basically there's only a few of us that survive that are privately operated, because the government basically loves all that pie, and they really don't want to share. And so with us, the only way we can survive is taking risks, doing things differently, separating ourselves from their mentality, separating ourselves from the way they do things. And that's that's why I was so excited to tell Colin you're coming on the show, because I don't think we'd be here right now, because a lot of our private competition is dead, gone, disappeared. And I think there's only us and somebody else left now. So I'm all with that. Experimentation, take risks, go for it.
And we've got plenty of failures too.
Oh yeah. Yep, exactly.
And of course, and I think you touch on something nice, that the key is to make sure the failures don't kill you. Now, I learned that lesson late, and that meant that when my old company, which I built 15 years creating, when that failed almost 2 years, when that died, I ended up with more than about 1.2 million Canadian dollars in personal debt.
Wow.
And that's too much. And I'm kind of now learned how to make a bit more money so I can pay that off. It's not done yet, but it's going the right way. But that's too much, because that cripples you, especially if you're not lucky enough to be in a position like I am, where you can actually do something about it. So yes, you should take risks, but I'm all for micro-experimentation when possible, because we have this tendency to think that big rewards must come from big experiments. That you can't, if you want to go big, you need to try big, and sometimes that's true, but sometimes it's not, and sometimes just a small thing can have insane results. Even there's a lovely experience design, behavior design example of changing a button on a website. They changed one button, and they changed the yearly revenue by, I think it was like $300 million, something like that. So if you want Google that, like, $1 million button, stories all over the internet. But that sort of thing, because if somebody comes in and says, I've got an idea that'll give you $100 million, then our minds start thinking, okay, it's going to cost at least 10 just to try it, probably 50 to give it a fighting chance. But sometimes $1,000 and you have an odds at being at millions, if you kind of take the right experiment, the right place.
Good
now
advice.
I'll shut up. Go,
No. Hey, we don't do shut up on this show, buddy.
I'll do it myself.
Take it wherever you will.
Take it where you want. So here's what we got. 84% of global executives, and we said this a bit in the beginning of the show, said innovation, they all admit it, that innovation is where they have to go to survive. And then we got 95, that same group, according to, I believe this is your company's poll, the McKinsey poll, 94% were dissatisfied with their own innovation. Like, correct us if we're wrong, but why is there such a huge disconnect? Like, where is this coming from? I mean, it's a canyon of a gap.
Yes, it's because it's scary. It's very, very scary. And the faster the world moves, the faster you need to move with it. There's your own prime minister, the man who should be a model or a spokesperson for modern progressive values, Mr. Trudeau himself.
Hair product.
Said years ago at Davos in Switzerland, said the speed of change will never again be this slow. And that is scary as hell.
Yeah.
But it's also true. Yeah. And we as humans are bad at a couple of things, but one of the things we're bad at is we're bad at like numbers and facts. We're great at stories. We're great at kind of relative things. Put two guys next to each other, you can easily tell which is the tallest. But ask, are they like 174 centimeters or 173? You'll be like, I don't know. We're not good at precision. We're good at relative things. The second is we're terrible at taking responsibility. We are insanely bad at saying, yes, I took that call and I was wrong. If World War III breaks out tomorrow, if the nukes start flying and everybody starts dying, what will happen is world leaders all over the place who are even remotely involved, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to turn to the person next to them, colleague or spouse or TV station, whatever, and they're going to say, it wasn't my fault. And most of us will say, I don't care whose fault it was. We just wiped out 90% of the planet. It's all gone to hell. I don't care if it's your fault or your fault or your fault. What I care about is what do we do now? But for most of us, it's so scary. It's so scary saying, guys, we're going this way. I was wrong. I fucked it up. It was dumb. It was, I thought I was right, but I wasn't. So let's do something else. And that is incredibly scary. And that's one of the reasons why innovation is so damn tough, because at its core, it's going to somewhere. And in our book, we describe it that it starts with impossibility. That's our first like phase out of 12 is somebody says, what if the world was different? What if this was, what if we could do it that way? And then somebody else says, no, it's never going to work. That's where every single thing starts. Railroads, democracy, feminism, Coca-Cola cans, internet. Everything we have, everything we take for granted started with somebody saying, what if the world was different? And somebody else saying, can't do it, man. Idiot suggestion. Everything.
Yeah. That's very interesting. That's very, so yeah. So, if I still really, I understand that they're scared of change. But if you're in a situation where you're looking at your bottom line and you're saying, look, we're going in the wrong direction and there doesn't seem to be any up on this thing, why is change still being so fought at? Like, why is there such a pushback?
Because organizations don't exist. That's the first thing, is there is no Coca-Cola. I mentioned that before. There is no Coca-Cola. A button. Well, okay, now we're getting with like AI and so on, so maybe we'll get there. But right now, somebody has to put on a Coca-Cola hat and then press the button. Somebody has to speak to the people or manufacture the can or whatever, because organizations can't do things on their own. And that means while an organization may have all sorts of incentives to be more efficient there or slash.
Oh, we just lost Claus. He'll be right back. So, Colin, did I tell you that Mr. Claus Raasted here would be a wonderful guest, and there's tons of information there that he's sharing with us. And I'm telling you, didn't I tell you what this is going to be pretty awesome, and all the things that our viewers are going to learn down the road about innovation.
Yeah, Claus has been great, and like you say, I mean, his core, everything he says is so true with innovating and changing and getting out there. And I think he's touching on now the fear. I mean, people are scared to innovate. They're scared of failure.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the big thing.
Yeah.
And he's an inspiration to everybody.
Yeah, and he touches on a point, right? I mean, it's not just corporations, but it's small businesses. Everyone is there seems to be some sort of frightening factor out there. But then if your back is against the wall and we've got this COVID thing, I mean, this is the best time to experiment on a micro level or do something on a bigger level to see how it grabs you. But there's with the way things are going right now, and our friend is back, and we'll just finish the point here. But I think you banged it on the nose, Call, is to experiment, right? Yeah. So Claus is back here, so I'm just going to bring him back into the show. And again, welcome to the live excitement of a live show.
Hey, welcome back.
So we were scared you might have went back to bed.
I was briefly, no, I'm way too fired up for that. And I thought this is one thing I love about live. I've been in live events for like since I was 16. I love the energy that comes from uncertainty, from things. Yes, you know what's you want it to go right, but not completely right. You want there to be something. And as long as you trust the people you're doing it with, I mean, you guys, there's a good chance I'm going to try to click that link again and change to a different internet subscription if that doesn't work. All that sort of circus. Yeah. And then it means nobody really worries, but it just gives a small break. And then you could probably, I don't know, make a commercial for the Canucks or whatever happens in kind of those off moments that's going on. But thanks for, I was getting on a good rant. But now I'm back, and let's retrain our sites. Take it away.
Your innovation there, just like you say, having a little commercial, that's a great idea to have a little funny commercial we can stick in there when that does happen. Well, so there you go. You helped us innovate.
There you go.
It's in your mind, eh? It's in everything you think.
I think you're a commercial, Junior.
Yeah. Thanks.
This is true. This is true.
I mean, you could tell it's in the core. You are the core. Innovation is in your core. Everything you think of, that's,
I think that's hard to. It's hard once you've got it. It's hard to not do it, and that's sometimes a little bit annoying to people. And I think that's back to the point is that it's very scary putting yourself out there. It's not fun when somebody slashes your resources, when the boss comes and says, we've decided to innovate. And that means you're now getting your salary held because I've read a book that says you're going to come up with better ideas. Yes, that may be true, but it's not comfortable. There's a good friend of mine, a Danish psychologist, Jesper Toft, who I stole a model from him. And it's very simple. It says situation, pain, growth, new situation. And what he says is, psychologically speaking, you don't have growth without pain. And that is very, very true. And every story of successful companies, successful organizations, not every, there are some few outliers, but almost everyone, when you listen to them, they'll talk about this thing that was their greatest hit. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody knew it was going to work. And I know that feeling. I've been there. I've not been at the level as Nike or as George Lucas or something like that. Not even close. But I've had those. You do something, and afterwards, people are like, "But of course it worked." But when you're there, you had no idea. Yeah. I love telling the story of Jaws, the blockbuster movie with the shark. And the reason that you don't see the shark is part of the brilliance of that movie. It's what made it the first real blockbuster in the world.
Yes.
But the backstory, of course, as most people know now, is the sharks didn't work.
Yeah.
The sharks broke down. They were collectively named Bruce for some non-obvious reason, but they broke down. And at some point, I'm pretty sure Steven Spielberg has been sitting there looking into his trailer or hotel room thinking, shit. And then he comes out straight faced and he says, guys, what if we don't see the shark? And somebody will have said, Steven, that's a stupid idea. This is a shark movie, man. And you're not going to show what's wrong with you. And he said, no. Trust me on this one. And now we have Jaws, but it could just as well have gone wrong. I think that's what makes it hard, is that no matter if organizations know, there's a difference between telling somebody, if you want a relationship that's working, you need to be honest with each other. That's at least to a certain degree, that's a pretty good tip. Yeah. But it's much less fun actually saying, hey, I'm now going to be honest and see and trust you if you can handle it. And sometimes even worse, I want you to be honest and I'm going to try to handle it. And it turns out I can't, because the other person says, yeah, for 6 years I've done this and you've hated it. Oh shit. Or if we're honest, then that's really bad. Even though we subscribe to honesty as a policy, when we actually are hit by it, it's pretty scary. The same with innovation.
Yeah. Those definitely are in the same category up there. So Claus, one of the things when I was perusing your literature online, there was something I came across which caught my attention. It goes, I've shifted, and this is a quote coming from yourself, I've shifted my business to be truly digital and global, from being event-focused, travel-based, and in person. This year, I've coached people in 17 different time zones. I've taught university classes from California to Bangkok. I've made most of my money remotely, and I've gotten a glimpse of what a truly digital career can look like. So my question is this, and I think that's brilliant, because that there's a lot in between those lines. In 2020 has woken up many people, industries, and countries the reality of importance to embrace digital world and to up the skill levels, up your skills. While we've got this downtime, up your skills. How necessary is it for industry and individuals moving forward with the economy that surrounds us, and with the COVID factor and the isolation? How do individuals move forward to 21 to be innovative in their personal and business lives? How are people gonna? How important is this?
So imagine that you have two companies, and one company says, okay, guys, we need to talk to our customers about what we do now. And the other one, and one of the people in the room says, great, okay, I'll set up a couple of meetings. See you guys tomorrow, and we'll have the first meetings. Then you have the second company that says, guys, we need to figure out what our customers want. And then somebody in the room says, okay, how do we meet them? We need to learn how to do that first. Which of those companies do you think is going to be able to move faster?
Mm-hmm.
Very simple.
Mm-hmm.
There's a tremendous amount of time that's been spent in 2020, not went in wherever I was going. There's a tremendous amount of time that's been spent in 2020 learning new skills just to be able to talk together. I think the most spoken words in the corporate world in 2020 are you muted, or oops, I'm muted.
Yep.
And that doesn't happen in normal life. Most of us have learned to talk. We've learned to listen. We've learned to raise our hands. We've learned to take notes. We've learned to simply things like doing meetings has become a challenge. Mm-hmm. And if one group is working with people who've been remote working for years. I was lucky enough that I had, when our company, before it crashed, when we were at our biggest, we had, I think, people in 10 different countries. So we did a lot of remote working already. And that meant that I had, when this started, the people I work with, we could easily transfer because it didn't really mean a big difference in our working lives. But for other people, they're like, oh my God, what do we do? There's a quote from a German manager who I will not name, but which is sadly real, who said, how do I know they're not working if I can't see them?
Oh boy.
Imagine that's where you are.
Yeah.
And you're competing against somebody who's already having 3 Slack meetings at the same time while being engaged on forums, boosting their LinkedIn profile, and doing online webinars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a whole different world.
It's a whole different world. And because most of us as adults, we're so used to learning things at a slow pace, we're so used to things we know. And this is also in the experimentation range. When you ask people, what are you good at? Most people will not say, I'm good at talking. I'm good at like public speaking. I'm good at writing. I'm good at kind of, they'll say, no, they're bad at that. They'll say, oh, I'm a bad writer. I'm a bad this or that. The reality is that most people who are our age will have written, I don't know how many thousands of pages of text, how many millions, if not more, of characters of actual like on a keyboard. Yet, because everybody's done that, we consider ourselves to be bad at it. But if we look at somebody who's never done it, we are insanely skilled keyboard warriors. Yeah. Most of us. Now, suddenly we should.
At least one finger is.
Yes, at least one finger. At least one finger. Or maybe two. Maybe two.
Maybe right? Two.
Maybe two. And compare that with saying, how many videos have you edited if you've never done that? And then suddenly you see what it is. It's the difference between 0 and 1 is big. From 1 to 2 is pretty big, and from 2 to 3, then it gets smaller and smaller. But because we're used to comparing ourselves, when we say things like, oh, I'm not good at writing, what you really mean is, compared to an ancestor in 100 years ago, you're bloody brilliant at writing. And compared to 200 years ago, you are like top 0.1% of the world just by existing in this day and age. But because most of us are, we don't think of it that way. But suddenly we're confronted with something that's new. Oh, I've never had a Zoom meeting before. I've never done remote leading before. I've never, all this sort of thing. And we realize, oh shit, I'm behind. I'm really behind. And suddenly things start to become so clear. that there's if you're used to doing things in 3 months and suddenly you need to do them in 3 days, then it's going to hurt, but you're also going to learn
really quick. You're going to learn really quick.
Really quick indeed.
Yeah. So in tourism here in Canada, and this is we're going to touch a little bit on our industry because this is where our wheelhouse, we'd like to think anyways, is tourism is a monopoly in Canada where small businesses rely heavily on government tourism. It's been like that since the beginning of tourism here, where everyone is mind freeze that's the one source to go to get you out of trouble, one source to go to get you information. So everyone's been programmed that way over 45 years. That's the source. So what we're finding now is what steps can these people, these businesses, like you're relying for your marketing, you're relying on them for your revenues, you're relying on them to set their target markets, you're relying them on attracting the travelers to big communities, small communities. In reality, small communities don't get a lot of help, the big ones do, but so much so that many in our industry here on this side of the pond, what we're facing is that they're waiting for these associations to fix all their problems. How can and COVID has changed the playbook. We tell everyone like what we were doing a year ago is not applying now. This is not happening. And yet we're looking at the associations and they're putting out the same information. They're still buying trinkets. They're still buying $25,000 for trinkets. They're still building rat cards. They're still having all these insane marketing principles when the whole thing has changed, yet they're not doing any skill set training. I'll give you a good example. And I know I'm rambling, but I'll give you a good example. We have one of the associations here because basically our unemployment in the tourism industry is massive. Everyone's laid off. There's tons of skill out there, but they're not working. So what does the tourism association do? They now are putting on training sessions to help people learn the hospitality industry. Well, we got such a massive pool of talent. Why are we teaching more people to go in the industry? It's absolutely insane. So these are sort of the things that we're looking at. So again, that was my ramble, and I apologize. This is the show about you, but I had to share that. But now what small businesses are coming to realize is that they need to innovate or be more self-reliant because they're waiting here in Timbuktu, population 300. I have a B&B and I'm last on the association's list, so I better clean up my act. So what steps, being that you are so versed in innovation, you're so versed on trying to look at the gaps in the system on how to make it work. What steps can these corporations, these small businesses, what steps can they do to move forward into what definitely will be a tough few years ahead for our industry and be self-reliant? What would you suggest?
So I think the first thing to say when stuff goes wrong like that, or the board changes, is that all those people who are sitting out there right now thinking, I'm relying on, I'm waiting for. No, you need to twist that around. You need to say, all my competitors are relying on, all my competitors are waiting for, because that makes it a lot more tough, but it sets you free, because then you're not waiting anymore. You're not waiting for the turtle to get out of its shell. Then you're doing. And one thing that COVID has brought with us, which is brilliant and lovely and insanely cool for all of us who are privileged enough to live in kind of modern societies, whatever that means, is suddenly our audiences are global. Because if you can't be in the same place, you might as well have somebody who is in Argentina as somebody who's right next door, because it functions through a screen anyway. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that if you, let's say you're in Toronto and you think, okay, I used to have this Airbnb and it's not happening, but I'm up for doing a lot of different stuff. Who do I serve? I really like dogs. What can I do for dogs? Now, then if you think, okay, I'm going to create an online dog experience, whatever that looks like. I don't know what it looks like, but let's imagine you do that. But nobody wants that where you are. Well, you might as well target it at people who live in Buenos Aires, because they're just as close as the people who are right next door, because the internet connects you. And that means that you can target hyper-specific audiences, especially if you're small. If I decide right now that I want to do a thing, I want to train people on how to deal with white privilege because now you've realized it exists, and there's no market for that in Denmark. There's nothing for that in Italy, but there might be a market in Nigeria.
Okay.
I can find that. I could serve the suburbs of a Nigerian city from where I'm sitting right now just as easily as I could serve Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Even though mentally it's completely different. It's a completely different planet. And the nice thing about that is that if I try to serve somebody in Denmark and I say, I'm Klaus, I'm Scandinavian, a little bit Viking, unkempt beard, you know, I have interesting ideas. They'll say, Klaus, you're just like us, except you're badly dressed compared to us, and your beard is terrible. So you're not winning anything. But if I do that pitch to a Nigerian company saying, I come from a Scandinavian country, I can help you guys with perspectives and connections that you don't have, they're going to say, whoa, that's interesting, and vice versa. So it's never been easier to get audiences or get connections that are elsewhere. And this is a great example of what we're doing right now. Just the fact that if we were just talking about countries, we're not, but we could easily discuss differences between Canada and Denmark and get great ideas for the audience just from that. And the fact that we can do that without me having to travel by plane, get somewhere to a studio, we do the recording, blah, 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 blah. Before, it was an insurmountable challenge to get somebody like me on a show like yours if it was all done in the same studio. Now, it's just about saying, hey, guys, can we do the thing? And we're even hampered by time zones. So the first thing to do, if you're in one of these places, is realize that before you had a huge ally, or maybe not so huge in kind of the big system. Now that ally is gone, and that sucks. But the world is your oyster. In the Faroe Islands, there were citizens who started doing nature walks, one-on-one tourist experiences, where they'd take up a phone. My phone's in my pocket, so I'm not going to pick it up. But they'd basically take out their phone, they'd go out into nature, and they'd connect with somebody via a platform. And then they'd do a one-on-one nature walk. So some foreigner from France or Belgium or Brazil could have a Faroe Islands nature experience and talk to a Faroese person. Now, what's that worth? Is that a 19 Canadian dollars service? I don't know, but it could be. Is building the platform a good business? It definitely is.
Yes.
Can you do it from anywhere? Yes. So especially the small tourist people out there, because I've also spent quite a bit of time in tourism, and it's a subject that fascinates me. I love kind of this whole, how do we go to places where we haven't been before, both physically and virtually? There's so many options out there. And as Canadians, you have a couple of advantages that other people don't have. One, you have insane nature. Nature. Two, you have peace and quiet in that insane nature because nobody's there. Three, you have all modern technology at your disposal. You have well-functioning infrastructure. You have well-functioning this and that, and you also have you have another advantage, which is your prime language, or at least one of them. I know French is also, but one of your prime languages is the closest thing we have to a global language. So you speak a global language, which most of us do in at least large parts of the world. Two, you have beautiful resources we can access. Yes, physically would be nicer, but virtually is also a possibility. And three, you have a modern nation with all the infrastructure that means. So you're in a pretty damn good position to go out there and start serving other customers. And I don't know if it's have a leadership meeting in a Canadian forest hosted by a former what are they called, the Rangers,
Mounties?
Mounties, exactly, thank you. I knew it wasn't Mountaineers. By a Mountie, have a meeting that happens with a Mountie host who's in a forest and who will take what he or she knows from that profession and take you while you're having your meeting. We'll say, okay, now we're going to do a break. We're going to look at this vista. What does it make you think of? What do you want to do? How do you translate this into your business? Show them a bear that's chasing them, for all that I know. But suddenly you can reach people, and you could reach them before. We could have done this a year ago. The technology was there, but the culture wasn't.
There you go.
Now it's there.
Yeah. That's so, and that's true because I can tell you right now, I've bet more I'd like to call up their, first of all, their acquaintances, then they became friends, and they're all over the world. And the nice thing is, it wasn't just like a flash meeting. It's developed into a good partnership, talking all the time on LinkedIn, sharing ideas. And I find prior to COVID, I didn't have time. Wrong. I didn't make time to establish, to grow my partnerships outside of Canada, because I spent it's opened our eyes a lot in a lot of ways, that we were spending all our focus on in Canada and fighting a good fight and going against a very powerful competitor. But COVID's actually allowed us to grow on an international basis and form some partnerships, and even we're talking projects with some of these people out there, which never would have happened. And people like yourself, Claus, we wouldn't have met. I'm not saying we would or wouldn't, but I would say the chances of would have been slimmer, because of your schedule and ours. And of course, yours is a lot on a way higher level, but we still might not be able to have done that. So yeah, I agree. I think there's things that the people who have taken advantage of this downtime are the people who are growing their skills and growing their networks.
And part of and I want to build on that, because I agree completely, is that there's a company, I stumbled across them a little bit ago, that what they do is they rent out a goat for a meeting. So you can rent a goat for a meeting, for an online meeting. So what they've done is they have a goat. They probably have more animals. I'm not sure about that, but I know about the goat. And they have a guy with a camera who films the goat. And you can rent the goat for 10 minutes or half an hour, whatever you want, at your meeting. And people pay for that, because who doesn't want a goat at your meeting? Like, you're having this, whatever, it's a conference, it's an interview, it's an idea session. Who doesn't want to pay to have a goat? And the nice thing is, I don't know if that goat is physically in Uganda, or if it's in the American Midwest, or if it's in India. And it doesn't matter. But I know that there are people who are renting out goats to online meetings. And if that can work, then don't tell me that your idea can't at least have a try.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there you go. Now we need to learn moose now. We got to learn moose.
Moose.
Yeah.
Rent a moose.
Moose.
Rent a moose. Rentamoose.com. It's probably available.
There you go. I can't even believe you'd rent a goat. That's an interesting. I'm going to look that up online, find out that background on that. One of the things closes up, and I just want to make sure people out there know, is that a good way to get a hold of you is through LinkedIn. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about. We talked a little bit in the green room while you were munching down on some poutine there in Beaver Tails. But one of the things I wanted to sort of sidekick was making sure that you tell our viewers a little bit about your keynote series, because I've really enjoyed them. They're short, they're sweet, they're to the point. That you're hosting on LinkedIn. Maybe tell us a little bit about where that all came from, and why you're doing it. Where's the need? How do you see the need there?
So thank you for that. So the thing is that I do keynote speaks, and I've done that for a long while. I've done that in the physical world. I've transferred that to the digital world. So I speak at events, that sort of thing. People bring me in. I do a talk on something innovation related, or something kind of in that territory. Now, I had a friend who Chris Mix, an American former creative producer at CBS News, and he said at some point we were talking, he said, Klaus, if you're selling keynotes and you're doing keynotes, why don't you do more keynotes? And I'm just as stupid as everybody else. So I said, but Chris, I'm doing all the keynotes I can. I rarely say no to an opportunity, even if it's free. And he said, no. What keeps you from taking your setup, which you have at home? I can even show you. There's a green screen hanging right there. Moving box. But there's a green screen that I can roll down, so I get like a decent professional looking setup with lighting, yada yada. And why don't you do keynotes without an audience and just like fire them out on your own? And I said, you mean just standing up and pretending somebody hired me and just talking? He said, yeah, because you have an audience already. I said, oh, I guess there's nothing standing in the way of that. So that was 22 days ago. And since then, I've done 22 keynotes, because I do one a day. Yeah, and the nice thing about that is nobody can stop me. I mean, I have to find the time for it, of course, and it does take time to do a keynote a day, even if they're short. They're somewhere between 5 and 25 minutes, so they're not standard like 45 minutes. But even though they take me energy, it's something I control, it's something I produce, and it's a great way to showcase who I am, what I think, what I can help with, and how I can do it. And there's some people who will grab one, some people will follow some of them, and somebody will send one on to a friend, that sort of thing. And that's for me. That works for me. But the reason I do it is to show how easy it is to start on a thing, and how well, if you do something that is digital, how well that travels. Because even if I stop, my goal is to do 100 in 100 days. Hopefully that leads to a TED Talk. But even if I stop that at some point, I will always have that repository. And one thing that I've found about having content, video content, written content, whatever, is that I can dive into it later. So I've got podcasts and blogs and videos, yada, yada, from my career. And sometimes I'll be somewhere and somebody will ask a question and I'll say, I've got a video for that. Or I wrote a blog on that. Or here's a podcast episode on that, because it's there. So one of the things I would advise you to do is that if you are looking to spread your reach, or looking to kind of serve people, looking to spread your ideas and show who you are, produce some content that is interesting, and find some people who want that content. Not just produce it and force your friends to watch it. Most of my friends are not watching my content, because why would they? Most of my friends do not work in innovation spaces. So getting an innovation video every day is not exactly what they need. I'm sure my family doesn't watch it, but there are people who I didn't know a couple of months ago who now follow me religiously because they found that they want what I'm producing, and the internet has now connected us. And that has never been easier. But you need to do the stuff and try it out.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're all into that content marketing space with our blog, and we also maybe we could talk about this off screen another day when it's not 4 a.m. or now closing 5 a.m. But we design a unique, very unique, and we coded a very unique content marketing program for small and rural communities here in Canada. And in their first year, they grew 1,400 top 10 positions on Google for keyword search positions. Based on content generation through video and through blogging, and also through social media and image. And a lot of people don't take image seriously, but Google Images is a big search, and a lot of people don't take their images seriously. They don't prepare their images. So there's a huge space there to somebody to jump in. So we'll talk about it another day. But before we let you go, close, because it is closing in on 5, and we know you want to get a couple hours of sleep. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers before we let you go, sir?
I think the last thing I'd like to share, and first of all, there are two things. One is thank you for this. This has been an absolute delight. I am glad I got up at 4 in the morning to do this. And that's without knowing if anybody's listening. That's just having the experience with you guys. That's been more than worth my time. If somebody else has heard this, that's even better. The second thing is that, and I cannot stress this enough, if you want to innovate, it's very simple. You sit down with somebody, with a mirror if you don't have anybody else, and then you say, what is the biggest change I can do, the biggest idea I can try with the smallest amount of risk? And then you try that. And then you learn. And then you do the same tomorrow or something different tomorrow. Because it's not about changing everything. It's not about saying, okay, we used to run a hotel, now we are an online circus. That's hard. It's doable, but it's hard. But it's about changing small stuff. Maybe don't go to that meeting. Maybe try a different post. Maybe go to a different audience. Maybe do a small thing different. And then find out, does that work? And if it works, then widen that bridgehead. Widen that, kind of push in the spear. And if it doesn't work, then you find somewhere else to stab. But a lot of people get caught up in the idea that innovation has to be big. A lot of innovation starts incredibly small, and then it expands from there. So find something, anything, and try it differently tomorrow. If it works, expand. If it doesn't, try something else. Try. If you don't try, you're never going to fail. And if you're never going to fail, well, then you don't learn stuff.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's what I really enjoy when I'm watching your posts and feeds and so forth. Just so everyone know, you can hook up with Claus here on LinkedIn. We've also been flashing his website across the screen. Make sure you copy that down, and also make sure to check out his project that it's absolutely mind-boggling, and it's so unique at the College of Extraordinary Experiences. And again, all this information has been put up on screen this whole show. Please look him up. Say hi. Tell him you're from Canuckland. Tell him you love maple leaf and maple syrup, and he'll take a liking to you. We're sort of hoping us Canadians are growing on him. And I'd like to say thank you very much, Claus, for coming to our show again. Much appreciated. And we look forward to catching up with you again.
Thank you, guys.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.